You just picked a fight with the last civilization you should have. These are the moves of civilization unrestrained by any treaty, guided only by their own avarice and a belief in their natural right to rule. I have seen the proof. Saratha's voice cut through the chamber's tension, a blade of cold certainty. He stood at the heart of the assembly, his skin like polished obsidian absorbing the harsh light. Metallic plates across his shoulders and arms shimmer with a faint, menacing ripple, each small shift glinting with unspoken threat. His crest, a ridge of hardened scales, rose slightly, an instinctual, scornful gesture. He surveyed the gathered delegates, his sharp gaze pinning anyone who dared look back. Every motion was intentional, his clawed fingers slicing the air toward the glowing holograms cycling above. Sarah didn't request their focus. He stole it, leaving no possibility for doubt. The loop repeated, a damning feed. Human vessels rending asteroids, colossal drills piercing a planet's crust, settlements spreading like a blight across barren satellites. A crimson, pulsating overlay washed across each projection, stark notations of treaty violations and tainted neutrality zones. His Talon hand lifted in a slow, controlled arc, letting the images amplify his unvoiced condemnation. A murmur spread through the translucent forms of the assembled emissaries, reactions varying from subtle curiosity to a heavy, knowing quiet. In their endless hunger for more, Seraph continued, his tone thick with contempt, they spit upon the sanctity of our shared accords. Their pride is a sickness, a rot that threatens the very balance we have maintained for eons. He paused, letting the accusation hang in the air. I propose immediate military sanction. We must excise this infection before its roots grow deeper. A wave of palpable discomfort washed over the assembly. The holographic delegates flickered as whispers spread. In stark contrast, the few physically present counselors remained stone-faced, their attention fixed on the confrontation unfolding between Seraph and the human representative. One or two voices dared tentative dissent, but most held their silence, eyes pulled back to the damning loop of evidence above. Seraph turned, a small, calculated movement that made him seem to tower over even the tallest projection, his shadow a stark line on the luminous floor. This is absurd. A steady, calm voice countered from the opposite side of the chamber. Illyra Vance, High Representative of Earth, rose from her seat with deliberate grace. Her platinum hair was impeccably styled, her dark attire a severe contrast to the glaring projections. She radiated a confidence that felt unbreakable. Her sharp gaze locked onto Seraph. What you have presented isn't proof. It's a desperate fiction. The chamber fell silent, save for the low hum of projectors. Saratha's crest twitched, his metallic scales shifting minutely as he focused entirely on Vance. These supposed records, Vance continued, gesturing toward the holograms, are filled with holes. The temporal markers conflict with confirmed galactic transit logs, and the zones you flagged as protected, they've been devoid of life for generations. She paused, letting her words solidify. This is not evidence. This is manipulation. Take care with your insinuations, human, Sarath interjected, his voice a low, venomous rasp. You are perilously close to dishonoring this council. Vance took a single measured step forward, hands clasped behind her back. I dishonor no one. I merely reveal what is real. The murmurs returned, louder now, as delegates shifted their attention from Sarath to Vance. Some projections tilted in what might have been agreement. Others remained inscrutable, their alien features impossible to read. Saratha's lips curled into a faint, disdainful sneer. Your species speaks of truth with a forked tongue, while your actions consume whole worlds. This council will not watch idly as your kind shreds our laws. Vance's eyes narrowed. Humanity has honored every agreement ratified here, even as others have. With a sharp gesture from Sarath, the chamber's audio systems dampened around her position, silencing her next words in a calculated, muffling hum. A shocking quiet gripped the room. A few delegates turned their projections toward Sarath, others frozen in stunned disbelief at the protocol breach. Sarath stepped forward, his voice slicing the quiet. The session will proceed, without interruption. His tone left zero space for argument. Behind him, the incriminating holograms kept cycling, a silent, relentless prosecutor. Vance stood motionless for a heartbeat. Her fingers brushed the polished edge of the console that had just muted her voice. Adjusting the collar of her jacket with slow precision, she turned without another word and strode toward the exit. Each footstep was a declaration of defiance in the charged air. At the chamber's edge, a figure seemed to coalesce from the shadows, its form semi-translucent and pulsing with a soft, rhythmic light. Scar moved with an eerie, fluid grace. He leaned close to Seraph, his whisper a melodic, dangerous hum. "Congratulations, Sovereign," he murmured, his light flickering. "You've just declared war on the wrong people." The sharp tone of a priority alert broke the tension. High Representative Alara Vance marched down the corridor, pulling a sleek data slate from her jacket. Urgent notifications, each stamped with the seal of Colonial Emergency Network, cascaded across its surface. Her expression, already hardened by the Council's humiliation, darkened further as she scrolled. Then the first video feed played. Chaos. Grainy security drone footage showed civilians running through the metal corridors of a domed settlement. Smoke choked the frame, but the screams were unmistakable. In the distance, the distinct, jagged silhouette of a Cathar dreadnought hung over the colony, its plasma cannons lighting the skyline. Explosions tore through structures. The feed jerked violently, then cut to black. The next report was no better. A mining outpost on a desolate moon was now an inferno. Cathar's shock troops moved with brutal efficiency. A child's cry cut through the static before that feed, too, terminated. Vance's grip tightened on the slate, its edges biting into her palm. The relentless reports grew worse. Sigma Station, Outpost Theta, Caliban's Reach, all under brutal assault, all burning. Her jaw set. She moved swiftly through the docking bay, ignoring the salutes of officers, her focus solely on reaching the shuttle that would take her to Unity, the human flagship holding position nearby. She had barely stepped onto the Unity's command deck when a terminal chimed with an incoming, high-priority transmission. She accepted the call. The holographic image of Admiral Marcus Thorne flickered to life, his broad frame and stern face radiating grim authority. "Chancellor," Thorne began, no preamble. "We're getting scattered," frantic reports. "Attacks across multiple colonies. What in the stars happening there?" Vance's lips pressed into a thin line. "The Cathar leader, Seraph. He presented fabricated evidence of our violations. Before I could fully counter it, they cut my transmission. It was a staged humiliation, Marcus." She gestured to the console. "And now this." Thorne's expression hardened into something colder than steel. "This wasn't just about silencing you. They were setting a narrative, laying groundwork." "Exactly," Vance said, her voice low and fierce. "This isn't politics, Admiral. It's war, and you have full, immediate authorization to respond. Strike back, with everything we have." Thorne gave a sharp, single nod. "I'll convene the fleet commanders at once. We'll secure evacuation lanes and protect what colonies we can." Vance leaned closer, her gaze unflinching. "Marcus, we cannot afford to look weak. Not for a second. Let them see what we become when we're cornered." "Understood, Chancellor," Thorne replied, his voice like forged iron. The transmission ended, leaving Vance in the quiet hum of the command deck, a silence that felt like the galaxy holding its breath. Admiral Thorne turned to his tactical officer. "Lieutenant Chun, compile every fleet asset within range of those colonies. I want all captains on a secure channel in 3 minutes. Send them the attack data. Full dissemination." "Yes, sir," Chun responded, her hands flying across her console. Thorne's focus locked on the holographic strategic map. Each pulsing red icon felt like a physical blow. "Send the order. All available fleets are to mobilize and reinforce the colonies under attack. Immediate engagement protocols." They moved now. The command rippled through the network. On the display, blue markers, human fleets, began to shift, converging toward the crimson clusters of conflict. Above the colony of Sigma Station, the sky was bleeding fire. Streaks of plasma carved through smoke and debris. The colony's meager defense turrets fired in frantic bursts at the massive Cathar warship dominating high orbit. On the ground, chaos reigned. Civilians sprinted for evacuation shuttles, the roar of engines drowning under the sounds of collapsing buildings. Then, human reinforcements arrived. A dozen sleek warships tore out of hyperspace, their hulls shimmering as weapons powered mid-maneuver. The lead ship, the Mjolnir, plunged into the fray, its railguns tearing through smaller Kthar patrol craft. On the Mjolnir's bridge, Captain Ikeda shouted, "Concentrate fire on their orbital control ship. Break their line and give the ground teams an opening." The ship's cannons roared. Volleys of hyperkinetic slugs hammered the Kthar dreadnought. Explosions rippled across its hull. The monstrous vessel began to list, its shields failing. Human fighter craft darted through the chaos, drawing enemy fire away from the evacuation shuttles struggling to lift off from the surface. Not far away, at Caliban's reach, the situation was more dire. Kthar ground forces had breached the perimeter, moving with methodical brutality through the settlement's narrow access tunnels. Desperate pleas from the colony's governor crackled over the emergency comms. "Governor Eris, this is Commander Falk." A voice cut through the static. "Extraction team is inbound. Hold your position. We'll get your people out." Falk's strike force approached under stealth, using the planet's rocky ring for cover. Their lead shuttle slipped past the Kthar orbital pickets. As the shuttles landed amidst the carnage, heavily armored Marines deployed, setting a defensive perimeter instantly. "Get the civilians loaded. Now!" Falk barked. His team's coordinated defense forged a narrow, vital corridor. Civilians, faces streaked with soot and terror, clambered aboard. One Marine, pinned down, shouted into his comms, "Commander, we're out of time. We need suppression fire." Falk's eyes darted to his tactical feed. "It's coming. Hold." A human gunship screamed overhead, unleashing a hellstorm of missiles that vaporized the advancing Kthar line. The last shuttle lifted off just as the perimeter was overrun, the Marines retreating under a hail of enemy fire. Back on the Unity, Thorn watched the live feeds. Casualty reports, evacuation tallies, enemy movements. It all scrolled in a relentless stream. Lieutenant Chen approached, her face grim. "Admiral, new reports. Multiple deep space relay stations and research outposts are also under assault by the Vorin." Thorn's head snapped up, simultaneous with the colony attacks. "Yes, sir." Perfectly coordinated. Thorn's shoulders squared. He studied the map, now blooming with even more red icons. "Alert the nearest reserve fleets. Priority reinforcement to the most vulnerable stations. They are to hold, at all costs." "Yes, Admiral." Thorn's voice was cold, resolute. "Send what we can. Tell them to dig in. This ends soon." The ship Pandora, an infiltration-class vessel, slid through the void like a shadow. On board, Captain Darius Rook reviewed the mission parameters with his team. "This is a single-window operation," Rook stated, his voice steady. "We get in, we plant the package, we get out. 10-minute clock, max." Sergeant Kayla Voss, their cyber warfare lead, nodded, her focus locked on the hologram of their target. A massive Kthar communications nexus, the nerve center for their local fleet coordination. Minutes later, the Pandora emerged from a micro-jump. Its advanced masking systems hummed as it drifted toward the alien station, docking silently with a maintenance hatch. The team moved like ghosts through the cold, dimly lit corridors, past pulsing alien glyphs and dormant machinery. They reached the central core without raising an alarm. Voss approached the main console, interfacing with the alien system. She inserted a sleek, black data spike. "Package is deploying. 3 minutes to completion." Footsteps echoed in a nearby corridor. Kthar patrols. Rook's signal for absolute stillness. The patrol passed the doorway, their guttural chatter fading. "Done." Voss whispered, disengaging. "The seed is planted." They retreated just as swiftly, slipping back to their ship. As the Pandora detached and cloaked, Rook activated his comms. "Admiral, the box is open." On the Unity, Thorn received a message. A grim, thin smile touched his lips. "Understood, Captain." "Well done." He turned to Chun. "Begin Phase 2. Across the sector, the digital virus unleashed chaos. Kthar dreadnoughts drifted, their navigation systems receiving false, conflicting commands. Voran strike cruisers broke formation, their coordinated assault splintering into confusion. The enemy's seamless communication web was now a tangled snarl of distortion and static. Despite the disarray, the sheer mass of the Kthar and Voran fleets pressed forward. Human forces fought with desperate valor, their tactical ingenuity straining against overwhelming numbers. Admiral Thorn watched the patterns emerge within the chaos on his display. They're fragmented. This is our opening. Lieutenant Chun, order all battle groups. Launch coordinated counterstrikes. Reclaim lost positions. Priority is the evacuation zones. Human ships broke from defensive postures, striking isolated enemy vessels with surgical precision. Fighters weave between behemoth warships, targeting engine clusters. On the ground, Marines and civilian volunteers push back, turning city streets into brutal killing zones, buying seconds then minutes for more to escape.